Okay, guys, nice to see you all here. So actually, we both, me and Michael, or Misha, how you call it? Okay.
Misha.
Both here from Terrasoft company. I would say one of the largest product companies in Ukraine. And we have kind of different backgrounds. Both of us, in different ways, worked before joining Terrasoft in startup companies, which is kind of totally different approach in the way you handle products and issues you get. So, this week we decided what we're going to talk about, and we decided that something is really interesting and something that brings you a lot of insights is to compare how you differ the startup way of working with products and enterprise way of working with products. So this is what we are talking about today. And my position in Terrasoft is I'm BPM'Online product leader in charge of our CRM development teams and marketplace team. And Misha can tell.
Yeah, I just joined the Terrasoft company like maybe 6 months ago. Before I was doing the startup for 2 years. It was called Live Tracker. Maybe I heard about it. And before I was doing a lot of digital marketing with a lot of digital product, and then I just choose to move to the product development. So right now I have kind of a fresh memories of what it looks like to develop the product in the startup. And I have a kind of internal view from the Terrasoft company, how it's done in the large enterprise with the 25 Scrum teams working simultaneously with the frequent huge releases and so on. And we decided to divide the roles. I will talk about the startup side, and Alexey will speak from the enterprise point of view. So we'll have kind of talk show format or something like that. Yeah. So,
So before that, so that you get an understanding of what Terrasoft is, if you're not aware of that yet, just give you an idea. And basically, taking into account the specifics of our company, our examples about particular enterprise product development, you should look at that from that perspective. So we do not aim to say this is how the processes work in every product development, because there is too much difference between B2C companies and B2B companies, for example, B2B products and B2C products. So just an overview what Terrasoft and what BPM'Online, which is our product, does. So our company was born like 14 years ago in Ukraine. We can say for sure that we are 100% Ukrainian by origin company. And all this period of time we were focusing on CRM software development. Recently, like 5 years ago, we added one more direction in our developments. It's both CRM systems and business process management, or BPM systems. So these are two main focuses for us. We've grown so far. We've got like 7,000 customers. It's all enterprises, all companies, not end users. It's the companies that buy software from us. It's like around 6,000, I guess. We are growing our community of partners also. You see the number over there. And we've got a lot of offices. And basically, if you take a look on what we do develop basically 4 products at this point of time. It's a product for marketing automation, for Salesforce automation, and for service automation, as well as a platform that helps companies that want to have a single platform just to build some other product for enterprises, just to use all the tools that are easy to, that helps developers to build their platforms. So actually, BPM'Online Studio is a product for that kind of developers. And actually, to complete this image, so we've got the business process modeling tools, we've got CRM tools that are industry specific or generic, and we've got marketplace, which is like ecosystem of developments done by our partners, for existing BPM'Online customers, or it might be even standalone products that live their own life, that are marketed separately, as they are sold separately, and they just based on the BPM'Online platform. So this is what BPM'Online is, and actually, we can now just switch to what we wanted to talk about, and we've broken it down into few parts. So the first question we would like to discuss is how product concept and product visioning and product design works differently in a startup culture, in a startup product, and in an enterprise. And I pass the stage to Misha.
Yeah, thanks. So basically, yeah, we got a lot of stuff to share with you. So it's you got like no fancy pictures here, just kind of a lot of experience. Basically, the first part is that when you start a startup, you basically are not even sure that your market exists. Yeah, why you start a startup? You think that you developed, you invented, you found out some kind of idea that isn't present in the market in this kind of packaging or this kind of a business model or this kind of a feature set. So you start to develop that because you want to become a billionaire, actually, like the next Mark Zuckerberg or something like that. So from the product manager standpoint, and you often are founder of the startup at the same time. You kind of developing the product for the non-existent market until you found that this market actually exists. And you use basically your product as a learning tool. So your key goal is to develop some kind of MVP, right? It could be very minimal viable product, but still it has to have all the features, you know, the concept. But still the mentality behind that is that you can throw your product out like in a month, in 2 weeks, in a few months. You don't know yet, yeah, especially if you're early stage startup. If you're doing the startup in the B2C field, you actually use your live customers as a kind of testers, quality assurance engineers, and you do a lot of customer development. The second stuff is that another thing is that actually you have extremely fast feedback loop comparing to enterprise. You don't have these long releases. You can test your assumptions on the live customers, and if you do a B2C again, your metrics are also your like very directly connected with your business results. So if you tweaked something, you add some improved UX, you have like a new feature, and you see like in a few days, in a week, you see direct results in your business results, in your revenue, in your metrics, and so on. Another thing comparing with enterprise, you don't have these long-term goals. You don't have this huge roadmap ahead of you because this is stupid. Everything changes a lot. You have like different ideas from the founders. You have a huge influence from your investors. You have competitors and huge tech companies that just throw out some kind of new product that just kill your idea, and then you change your idea completely. So you as a product manager and your team that works on your product, and you try to motivate it and to keep it actually going, you have to be ready for this kind of thing. And this is very, very different from what we are used in the large companies, be it outsource or product companies. And the last one, but not least, again, you can test all the concepts. Yeah, so you have a very limited user journey. You have only the key epics. If you do your user story mapping, you test some kind of very limited slice of functionality that you have decided that is key for you. And you just don't have resources, you don't have a time to test everything. So let's see how it's different from the enterprise.
Yeah, actually, so if you look at a startup, it's kind of it's more about testing stuff, right? So it's like a framework where you can test everything, and that's basically the main goal.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit different in what we have to deal with in enterprise software. And let's start with basically same topics regarding the market. So the main issue you get when you think about your potential customers, where you are going to launch a new product or part of a product that is aimed to solve one more problem that was not solved yet within a large enterprise and within a large product like BPM'Online is, you already have all your customers, basically like you have a lot of them. And every time you're thinking about the best new quite good selling feature you want to have, like for different reasons, you might also come up with the best customers for that feature, because it's always nice to sell what you develop to those who might benefit the most from that. So, for example, we've got an example, got a case launching basically, I guess, 3 years ago, one of the products in our product portfolio, BPM'Online marketing, which was at that point of time not that popular scene in CIS, like countries where we also have a lot of customers in there, and it was quite a growing market, so we had to focus on that as well. And we ran into kind of a problem, because if you take a look on the competitors, which are mainly based like in US, and they work in that market, or a smaller portion in like Western Europe, they have all the tools, for example, and you can see the really quite good benefits of these tools for B2C companies, like if you sell marketing automation software for those who work directly with end users. And also, the customers are quite knowledgeable in United States, and they know what they want, they know the technology, and they know that the technology can help them. And so basically those are the best customers to sell this kind of product. But still, at that point of time, we had mostly the customers whom we worked with earlier, selling them CRM software, and at that point of time, like half of them, or maybe 16% of them, was like CIS-based companies. So there was no any knowledge about these kind of technologies in the market. And mainly we had to develop that need in those customers. And also, they were not like B2C companies, which are the best customer to have to sell the technology, but they were mainly B2B companies, and it requires basically a different set of tools that you want to sell them. So we had to, in our imaginations, we were focusing first, when we first developed the product vision for that, on ideal world, but like in few months we had to switch that to the real world of existing customers we currently have, and it really affected the backlog that we had. So that's the first thing. Another one, you are in so many markets, at least in our case, at the same time when you try to launch another product. So it also brings you some constraints and affects the way you work on your product. What do I mean? Actually, when you start developing and doing quite well with the technology, your like salespeople first focus on the most target customers that are the best customers to buy that. But when time goes, you have the technology. They see the like different customer requests in not that industries that are the best fit for like your product fits the best. But they still sell it to them, and you get more feature requests, and you a little bit lose your focus on those industries, and you go with the same technology to a little bit different one, and you get more requests, and you run into another market, and you have to work with that, because why don't you sell it, the technology you have, to another market? Well, they can buy that, but you, from the product standpoint of view, running into the issue of having too many customer segments and too many needs that you need to satisfy. So it's really hard to focus on one, because if you remember the first item from this list, you are already in market, and if you launch, for example, a new product in BPM'Online portfolio, you have to have an offering for all the customers, like from those you have. So it's an issue that you, from the start, have to work with all those customer segments and all those markets. Then, regarding the unique value propositions, another subject to point out. Actually, you can start your product with one good selling feature, or when you can launch a product that has quite simple, straightforward, unique value proposition at the very beginning, but when things grows, you try to expand, you get more feature requests, you are getting similar to some of your competitors in more ways. You cannot just say, I'm the one who releases that simple feature and that's my best thing I do. You are growing, growing, and growing, growing, and basically from our experience what we came to is the your unique selling point should not be just the functionality that you can offer that your competitors cannot, but it should be something about your platform at all. It might be quite different things. Either it's a platform capability basically for someone to customize the system, or it might be the benefits of flexibility from the user perspective, or like user interface should be nice, or etc. But it is the unique selling point in this case should not be just a feature, but some kind of benefits that all types of users get from your product as a platform. So that's what we've learned from that. Then quite straightforward thing, and it's quite obvious, is that the cost of strategy change, comparing to particularly the startups that Misha mentioned before, is extremely expensive. So you want to test things, you want to test your ideas, but you can't really do that much, because when you say something to an existing market, you have to work on basically, you have to have that offering in place for the customers, etc. You have all the sophisticated processes of development that are because of the number of teams working on that, because of different platform constraints, etc. You have a lot of automation going on, so it takes much more time to develop features. So when you invest in your new idea, you have to multiply that by all those parameters, the time and effort you will have to spend on that new thing you want to test out. So you really need to be careful with what you are going to launch. So. And the last point here is just on the contrary to what we have in startup, when you launch a product with a quite simple, straightforward selling idea, one simple, straightforward or few use cases how the product can be used by the customers and can serve them, you instead have all hundreds or even more different customer journeys that you will have in your system. So, for example, when you start working on, like, let's say, another model in your service automation module, you really need to understand that you will, right after you launch, as long as you are going to show your product to all your existing customers, to all the market, with all different segments of customers, you're going to have both users who are like small companies and they require quite straightforward, simple user interface and no setup, and everything goes out of the box, and you don't need to really do any system setup, etc. At the same time, you will get just on the contrary quite techy kind of companies who require a lot of customization, who have developers and analysts on their side, and they really don't care that much about the complexity of initial setup, and it's not what they care about, but they more care about the flexibility and all bunch of tools that you want to be able to customize, which complicates the process of like that initial setup. And basically there is a conflict of those two scenarios. This is just an example, and if you go deeper and deeper, you will see more. So that's another thing here to mention. And we get to the next.
It's a tough life in enterprise, right?
Yeah. But it's fun.
So yeah, let's talk about the backlog management. So we are talking here about priorities, decision making, and your constraints. So I'd like to start with the key point for the startup. So you have to be laser focused. Yeah, it's kind of the thing that we know, but comparing to enterprise, you work only on one top priority, and that's it. It's very easy in theory, but it's very difficult in the practice. When we started our idea with the startup, like with the previous company, we had like 1 or 3 ideas. Then we came to accelerator. And after 2 weeks, we had 47 different business cases with different business models. It was like a craziness. And we just had to test it like one by one. But you cannot test like 47 hypotheses having very limited budget and very strict time constraints. So you need to choose. And when you have chosen, you stick to it. You cannot change it. You cannot fix different parts of user journey at the same time. So you need to be focused again. The next one. in startup, you still need to have some procedures. You need to have some rituals, but you work in a very high-speed environment. You cannot just sit and be very bureaucratic, be very automated. You cannot have all your processes in place. So you move very fast, and you are a small team. You are in one office, in one room often. So you prioritize. You have like top priority on your communication or your agreement, and sometimes. And that sounds crazy for the enterprise, for the huge enterprise. The procedures are bad. They are just blockers for your progress, right? The next one is about testing stuff quickly. So you cannot, in the company, like in a huge company, you have to prove your concepts. You have a lot of stakeholders, internal, external. You cannot just throw out a raw product concepts to your customers if they are not ready for that, because they think that you are already developing it, or you promised it like 2 releases before, and they're expecting a lot for you. So you just cannot show that you are still working on that, and let's look at have a look on my prototype and just say what you think. So they think that you are an expert. In a B2C company, you have very easy access to the customers. You can test everything very rapidly, and again, with your team internally, you can just sketch out things, look at that, test it out, and start develop. And so you have a very short time between your idea, your concept, your prototype, and actually stuff on the production.
It could not be that simple, like I just got some requests from my first customers, they are my only customers, I will just try to test out those hypotheses. Or this is something my investors are asking me for, if I don't do that, I don't get those investments. Well, it's also quite straightforward in this case, but it's not what you can do here in this case. Like, just to give you an idea of how the process of prioritization works, for example, in BPM'Online, it takes, it's an ongoing process, basically, like with some deadlines by major releases that we need to plan something strategically for the next upcoming one. It takes like 2 months to put all these things together. I'll just break it down in a few minutes. What are they? To come up to the whole picture, whole image, taking into account all the customer feedback sources, all the details, to come up with what are those, what those 20 plus teams are going to work on. So we've actually, when you take a look on our prioritized backlog, not for particular teams, but for the whole research and development department, we try to label every single goal or task or epic that we place there by the source where it came from, and you cannot really compare the sources, so you just need to decide in some sophisticated way, I just want to do that. So it's a customer request that we get from the existing customers. It's like features that they really need, and we might be committed also by some contracts when we sell something to them, just under the conditions that we will get it in a product. So it's the first one. Then it's one of the huge sources of information, and you're gonna every day getting overwhelmed with that. It's information about customer, not feature requests, but issues that they have. We have a tight connection to our customer support. It's like they just sitting next to our research and development, which I think is quite cool. But you're getting really overwhelmed with the amount of the information you get regarding the existing issues. So we've got processes in place to handle that, but still, it's a huge another source. By the way, we just break down customer issues into like blockers and like fire alarm issues and everything else, because if you take a look on what we focus mainly, we don't really have time to focus on those not fire alarms. So just pick the most important ones from that. Commitments, I just mentioned them in customer requests, so sometimes we are bounded by the contracts for some development, and customers say it should come out of the box, and in some cases it totally makes sense not to do it within an implementation, just to bring them feature out of the box. So we try to limit that, but when you work with large enterprises, when it's a matter of like billion contract, you have to make some kind of commitments like that. Then you have your prospects in the market. You have all those evangelists working with the market and giving speeches to the market and talking to the customers. You have Salesforce talking to the customers, and you get all the different types of requests from the market. You are not really in from the customers who work with other software. So like too much requests that you should also have a process to in place to prioritize and work with, so the prospects needs. And then you have your strategic business goals, for example, like for BPM'Online, like a few years ago we had a strategic goal. We need to make BPM'Online multilingual to be able to be easily translated to any language in the world and to have like 20 languages coming out of the box. So it was quite kind of strategic goal, but we didn't get really before that any customer feedback for that feature, but it was a strategic goal for understandable reasons. It also comes to the backlog. And another one you don't really consider in a smaller companies is your internal, probably mainly automation needs or some other needs that you also have to put on your backlog. And it's really painful for the stakeholders who basically need to approve that, invest in that, to understand that it's something that you'll have to focus on. So it's a lot of prioritization criteria for sure. Then, another thing is when you consider the priorities of tasks, you cannot really think about the MVP. So it's a mistake we did multiple times already, and it's quite common, I think, for all of us to think about the cost of the product just by how much it will going to cost to bring it to the market. Everything else comes further. We will get the feedback. We will either get customers that will pay for ask for further development of the product, or we'll get investments, or it will just shut it down. So we don't really think about the further consequences. But if you are in an enterprise, you cannot really just shut down the things that you launched and sold to your customers as a part of a, let's say, bundle of products. You actually have the relationship with them, you sell other products to them. You cannot do it this way, so you have to account for the maintenance cost of every single new big thing you develop within a product. We had an example of functionalities that we invested really a couple of months in trying to build it within BPM'Online framework, but we did, I think it was a success. We did our best to just give what we've done by the time to our partners and ask them to develop that part of the product. It's one of the vertical solutions that they're actually working on, because we understood that if we compare the scope of what should be invested into the scalability, into automation of testing, all the processes that should be different for that particular vertical solution, it's going to cost us another year of 2 development teams to support that, and it was not actually what we could afford at the time. MVP is sometimes a self-delusion. Actually, we all like as everybody are talking about MVPs, and actually every time we are saying, oh, if this portion of functionality is MVP or not, oh, we can just live with this part, just skip that. Sometimes it's a self-delusion, because in my perspective, MVP concept is only valid when you are not really sure what the total product should be, and you don't really know if it's going to be used by the customers. But in our cases, as long as you've got so much customer feedback at the very beginning, you really know that even if you solve one use case, the 10 remaining ones, they just don't disappear. And if you don't resolve them, you should not, like, it would be a mistake for yourself to think that the customers will be satisfied just with that small portion. So it's basically one of the toughest parts in our product planning, because another example, again with BPM'Online getting the localization capabilities for multiple languages, we've invested like 1 year of few teams into that, because it was quite of architectural, it required a lot of architectural changes in the platform. 1 year, and obviously no one of stakeholders wanted to invest more in that part. But when we took a look on what we've got by that year of development, we actually solved just one problem. We got able to localize the system by ourselves and the user interface to show functionality in different languages. But we were quite far from all appropriate tools for our community of translators to work on that, and we were quite far from given all the right tools for partners to be comfortable with those translations. And we are currently trying to solve that somehow, but still it's a really issue, because the expectation of the stakeholders at the very beginning was like 1 year is enough to cover everything, and we decided, well, you can do it everything in one time, just focus on MVP, but then you understand that your MVP is much more, because if you want to have those localizations, you want to have the partners who translate them, they need the tools, etc. So yeah, MVP is might be not that small if you think about the enterprise. And I already mentioned a little bit, there is one more thing that you don't really work on in startups is internal automation, and it's really important thing, but just wanted to point out one thing. The moment when the business realizes that it's something that you really need, in our experience, and I think it should be quite common, I guess, is they understand it from the first critical case with the customers. So when they realize that having no automation of testing, of load testing, of some other things leads to loss of customers, then that's your selling point for your stakeholders to explain them that you really need those tasks in the backlog. And the last thing from my side here is another interesting point. Actually, when you talk about the priorities, for example, in our case, we've got platform teams and we've got product teams. Like the platform teams work on the basic tools, like the basic core user interface, process engine, etc. And we've got like marketing team, sales team for development, service team, and they really using the tools that the first core teams develop. And there is always the conflicts of the priorities, because, for example, one like service team might be requesting, and it's really unavoidable to live without some core functionality for the service product, but it's quite good for sales and marketing, for example. And it's really tough to handle the priorities between, like in such a cases, because the answer you sometimes give to the service product, like hold on for half a year, you've got some kind of tools for what you need, but actually we've got more customers for sales part right now. You should probably focus on those. So this the last tricky thing I wanted to point out here. So this is how it works. The next part.
Yeah, I believe we should speed up a little bit to have time for questions. All right. So the customer voice. For us, this is a heresy. Yeah, you cannot say it in enterprise, but in B2C startup, you can say it easily, right? So for you, often support tickets are just a data source. So you test assumptions, you need to get the feedback from the market, but you don't need to fix all the things. So you don't have these account managers or customer success or client service director coming to you with the screams, this is a VIP client, you need to throw out all your backlog and you need to fix this right now. So you don't have these kind of cases, and you have the capability to experiment and look for your business model for your perfect feature set. Again, in a B2C, you have a lot of direct channels, right? Because the enterprise part that Alexey will cover, you often have the proxies and you have like the support teams and so on. Right here, you have the capabilities to get the feedback from mobile applications, from the web interface. You have App Store ratings and comments. You have the website where they can contact you, but in enterprise as well. And you can write direct emails to your alpha beta testers, to your audience, just asking, what do you think about this? Can you jump on a short call with me? Can you find 15 minutes to ask some questions? Do you want to see some next releases first? And so on, so on, so on. So you have this kind of feedback in place. The same goes for the prototype testing. It is not about the prototyping, like the rapid prototyping, but it goes for the very limited realization of the very raw features that you want to test, and you can throw it out on the live clients. So you can have 1% of your clients seeing this kind of the feature, and you see how they use it. Do they complain? Is this affecting our metrics? And so on. Obviously, you cannot do this to the enterprise clients that are just, even if you are like a cloud-based company, right? You cannot just throw the unready functionality to your clients, because this is a huge money and huge reputational cost as well. And this is actually what I just mentioned. You can also have your closed beta with your live customers, and you can have the a lot of marketing communications. You can have launches, you can have advertising, you can have PR explaining what kind of the product features you have in place even before you have them. Again, you cannot do this. Sometimes you do that, but not so often with the enterprise product. You cannot just fake your product. Again, with the startup, as you know, you have all these communities. You have a product hunt, you have a Kickstarter, and so on. So often you just have some kind of 3D rendering of your product. You have the video, you have nice pictures, and you can test the product with that. You can have Android version in place, and you can promise the iOS version, but you actually aren't going to produce it, and so on. Right?
Yeah. And what we've got from the other side is actually, if in case of startup you are quite limited with ability, you really need to work a lot on test and figure out if this is something useful that you are going to work on. In case of, in our case, in case of enterprise, when we've got that many customer feedback, actually I think we'd never question ourselves. It's not a question, an open question, if it's something that's going to be useful or not. It's always about the priority and the audience for whom it's going to be useful. But still, we never like have something that someone came up with and we just trying to figure out, oh, that might be a good fit for the customers, because we've got that many communication channels with the customers on an ongoing basis. So all those answers, almost all those answers are already known. And if I talk about the channels, there are like really a bunch of them. You've got your sales force, salespeople who talk to the customers and get back to you with the feedback. You've got people who are in charge of implementation and launching and onboarding your customers. They were part of the customer services department. You've got your customer services department. You've got the implementation teams who work on the large project customizing the system. You've got your partners community who are also selling or implementing your system in our case, and they also have quite a good knowledge of the market, and they work with other systems. They share feedback with you as well. Then you're having like really a lot of those kinds of communications. You also have your marketing team, etc. To handle all those customer feedback sources, you definitely need processes in place, because if you just talk to people and try, on top of that you talk directly to the customers, if you focus on that, you will really die in that amount of the information not even figured out by the time the real priorities. So for every customer source, the really focus should be the quantitative approach for measuring the amount of that feedback. So that's really important thing, because if you don't implement that, the only group that will win from that this is a group of screamers among your customers, those who scream the much, or it might be not the customers but the employees in your company who scream the much and say that their customers scream. So you really need to have metrics to analyze either problems that you have, either features, etc., features you are requested for, etc., etc. On the contrary to that, you cannot just work only with a quantitative approach, because the pitfall of the quantitative approach is you might improve the metric and you might reduce the amount of problems that you have according to your stats from your customer service, or you can see that the percentage of the cases that you covered for some target group is larger than it was before, but at the same time you might still have your top customers saying, I cannot work with your system, and this is because you were not focused when working on every particular task on completely covers the whole story for a single customer. So it's kind of balance between that. So at the same time you need to rely on the quantitative metrics, and from the other side you need to have a target customer, focus customers, to make sure that where you got so far makes at least some of them happy, and it's a tricky point to figure out which one. And the last part, problem is never solved 100%. When you get the customer saying it's not easy to do, to complete this use case, and you resolve that, you should not think that the problem is gone, because there are too many use cases, there are too many different standpoints for that. You just need to measure if the amount of, if you talk about the problem of the negative responses, negative feedback, or not understanding how it works, whether it's reduced or not. So don't think it would be gone right after some change that you made. So this is it. And the last part is the development process, which is also quite different, as you understand, in those two stories.
Yep. So let's see how it looks. Basically, in the startup, you usually have everyone in place. Yeah, you have the product owner, and often if you have 2 or 3 founders, you have 2 or 3 product owners, which is not so good. Even sometimes you even have your investors trying to be product owner and to manage your backlog and your development priorities, which is bad as well. Still, you have designers, you have QAs, you have very multidisciplinary team, you have hackers who can do everything. Usually you don't have this kind of flexibility and everything in one team in the enterprise, right? You're very tight team, right? You're very lean and agile, and sometimes even over-agile, as I say it. So, but still, you need some rituals, right? You're in one place, you talk a lot, you negotiate a lot, you fight a lot, you find like good solutions, you throw them out, you find another good solutions, but still you need to have these rituals as well. From our experience, if you have like the usual Scrum events and artifacts, it goes very well with the development team, because you have this one rhythm, you have the points to synchronize, and if you have some kind of remote teams working for you, it's a good way to sync with them as well. Again, your priority is speed, right? It's speed over quality. So this goes for the testing, this goes for the automation, this goes for everything that is overhead on top of the product development. So your key focus is the increment. Yeah, you need to increment the product as soon as you can, so fast as you can. So you can fix things that you find that your clients find when they find it. Not you don't try to anticipate everything, because this is not your goal in a especially early stage startup. And the last, again, this goes for the testing, right? You don't need to have like 99% test coverage and so on. You don't need to have everything automated. You can use manual testing a lot. You can throw it out again and see how your testers, how your users actually use it. And this is quite different from the enterprise and B2B, right?
Yeah, that's true. Actually, the last part is also, like for me as a product owner for multiple teams, was a little like a very point of really lots of discussions I had with myself and with internally, how useful this automation is, and what's the ratio between the profit you get and the investment you do on that and I didn't resolve it at the time of those discussions, but now my answer to that is you just need to understand the profit of that. You just need to wait until the time when it pays off. So, like, if you take a look on the amount of work you've reduced by that automation in few years, for example, then you're pretty sure that it was a good thing. Obviously, it's not that easy to agree with that when you're at the beginning of the development that will take next 2 years. So if we conclude that and see what comes in enterprise software, in enterprise companies, enterprise products, few things. So cross-functionality. So it's one of the pillars of any agile process. It's things that you easily can achieve, or you can work and you will achieve that in your startup when you have one or few development teams, but it's almost impossible in the enterprise development because your teams should be focused on some portion, some functionality, and you've got that much of that. So you cannot just have one team having knowledge in everything. So if one team runs into an issue, the team is dependent on the features from another one, it's not a good approach to ask the team to dig into the details, into the code of that team and work on that. We had experiment with that, and that's not the good way for sure. The team will complain, the result won't be that good, so you have to have them focused on different topics, and that's what reduces their cross-functionality. And another thing is you need operational teams, because if you offload all the infrastructure work, all the automation work, all the developer operations work on your development teams, at least having that size of teams, in our case, we've got like 25 of them, not that big of the teams. And if you just offload of them, we also experiment with that. You will just have them wasting like half of their time on that because they are not much experienced in that operations. It's not their focus, etc., etc. So you have to offload this kind of stuff to dedicated teams. So it also makes them not that cross-functional and dependent on somebody. Automated testing, we discussed that already. And another thing is, another challenge that I would say, quite succeeded at, and we are quite proud of that, is building the continuous integration and continuous delivery process, which is quite hard thing when you are talking about the development done not by one team, but the 25 of teams working on absolutely different things, on dependent or independent things at the same time, and you need to build a process that will allow them to have, by the end of the week or even by the end of the day, one delivery ready for shipping, tested with no bugs, to some degree, and actually ready to be delivered to the customers. It was a really huge project for us internally, and we, as I say, are quite happy that we finally got to the point that we can synchronize all the teams and release all the products that I mentioned by all of those teams in one single day, one single time, within one process. Actually, we are shifting from the approach from releasing like every 3 weeks to releasing every single day. It's something that we're going to do this year. And the last thing, it's a pain of every new product owner, and pain for Misha now, who joined, as he said, Terrasoft recently, but he already understands, I hope, why it comes to that level of boost of definition of done as a tasks. So the issue is there is so much additional things that you need to do on top of just feature development, additional costs that basically every development costs you, which is really hard to understand at the very beginning. So every single new product owner comes and say, why would you release that small stupid thing in like 2 weeks? It's going to take like 2 days of one developer. Well, I'm just joking, not that big of a difference, but still. The answer to that is because of those small things that you don't remember when you make this assumption. You have to have your developers to work on the SDK, because if you don't have SDK, it's okay for first release, but when you get the feedback from your partners that saying the product sucks because you cannot really get an idea of how you're gonna implement that, because it works well, but they don't understand it. So you need to have their time spent on SDK, and you have to have their time spent on automated testing, and sometimes some features require more of that, and sometimes you don't have enough automation tools for that, so you have to invest in automation tools for a particular feature testing. And you have to have support of different, in our case, it's multiple databases we're working with, it's Oracle and Microsoft SQL. You also might have different platforms that you have to support. When you consider those cases, same development is also multiplied by some coefficient to be supported in all those environments, etc. You need to do things to help your support team further maintain the features, because it's okay to deliver something that that you can monitor only deep in the database or in log files, but when you've got hundreds of customers requesting and having issues and facing your customer support, you will get all the load of those questions from customer support to your development team. So then you really understand that you have to invest some time in the tools for support to easier get those insights to handle the issues. So if you combine all those things, which we call definition of done of every single epic, it's really multiplies the time that you need to spend on every single development. But it helps you basically to grow and do good things. I think it's all from our side.
Yeah, I believe this is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I hope there might be some
Misha.
questions.
Thank you, Alexey. Does anyone have any questions? Please raise your hands.
Okay.
Thank you for speech. As I understand, you have release cycle 3 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah. And does it mean that after 3 weeks you have a product that is ready for market, release to market?
Yes, that's correct.
Or you collect some features and after that you notify some customers that this product...
Yeah, thank you for your question. So actually we break down the marketing activities and the information and communication with the customers. So we have like major releases every quarter, and we like have huge events and explaining customers what we've got new so far. But we do small releases every 3 weeks, as I say, and we just after those 3 weeks start upgrading all the existing customers to a new version. Like within another 2 or 3 weeks they're upgraded, and we from that point of time start delivering to all new customers only the latest version. Well, we announce not the like in a marketing way, but just for our internal communities the features that we've got in that small release. So everyone who is interested in something can get an idea of what he's got.
Yeah, again, you have the cloud, like the SaaS model users, and you have also on-site user, like on-site customers that are like using on-site because of the security reasons, personal data, and so on. So the on-site users and customers, they actually update not so often, but at least for the like every major release, they update the whole infrastructure and everything.
Yeah.
So one more question. Do you have some acceptance testing?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, it's automated. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It's multiple levels of automated acceptance.
Heavy acceptance testing. It's
Highly acceptance. Okay.
All right, guys, any more questions? Then I guess that's it. No, sorry.
Another one?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. The question relates to the previous one regarding your release cycles. So you mentioned that you're striving to make it like every day release, and yeah, the goal is to reach these customers that might require this, because you also mentioned that not every customer would even update every 3 weeks. Then what is the purpose?
Actually, all the cloud, thank you. All the cloud customers get their updates right after the release within a couple of weeks.
Automatically.
Automatically, yeah. The goal is, as you say, to deliver the features as fast as possible, because you don't want, for example, if one feature was not in in the current situation, if you're not like half day, you didn't get half of a day to be in the release, then you'll have that cool feature in 3 weeks. There is no reason for that. That's why we just wanted to do it daily. Once it's done, it goes to production and is delivered to all the customers.
Yeah, sometimes you have some kind of incidents or feature requests or something that is very urgent, and one of our clients finds it on their particular use case, and you realize that it's worth of putting it in the box. So right now you need to go like either ask them to wait for 3 weeks or give them some like quick solution like a patch, and then make it again like delivered to the whole like other bunch of the clients. So if you have the like fast release cycles, you can do it like in no time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks guys for presentation. Question to Misha. How is your startup spirit feels in this big corporate machine? What would you like to change, and what you like most of all?
You're asking about like my like how do I feel myself switching from the startup to the enterprise, right? Well, I had quite a few discussions with all the stakeholders before I accepted the offer. And we discussed different points regarding the micromanagement. Is your Scrum real Scrum, or you have some kind of project methodology in place? Do I have like the full autonomy on the backlog and on the directing of my teams? And then when I got all this like yes, it was like a good sign for me. Being honest, I expected less than I got, because the company is old, and especially in the CIS market, everyone knows Terrasoft. And a lot of people still think that it's very kind of old school, post-USSR type of the company. But actually the company have changed like for the last 3 or 4 years completely. When the company oriented on the global market, all the guys realized that you need to have all the processes right in the place, because you cannot compete with Salesforce being a very rigid company and so on. So actually when I like got very deep into the company, I found out that actually I got this kind of autonomy. I can work on the product vision, and this is actually very like accepted in a very warm way. Yeah, because all this kind of initiative. Because if the company is large, it becomes sometimes a little bit blindsided, and you don't feel this feedback from the market. So every kind of fresh blood is actually welcome. So right now, after six months, I believe that I feel myself good, because I mean my goal is to develop the good product, right? And they have all the resources in place, a lot of support. And comparing the startup, when I was the CEO and the founder of the startup, I spent like 50+% of my time on the fundraising, legal, hiring, firing, all kind of financials, banking, like conferences, and so on, exhibitions. Right now, I do only product, and this is cool.
I would just add that it might not seem like that, but it's still possible to make an agile organization and agile development even in an enterprise. And not for me to judge, but I think we did quite a good job in that, building the I don't know how true is a Scrum in our companies. I believe it is.
No, this is kind of vanilla Scrum, actually.
Yeah, even over Scrum.
Over Scrum, yeah.
So actually, first one, and build agility in the process, internal process that you have, on just not the development process, but all others. It's the only way for you to do all the changes. For example, to basically get to the point when you do releases every 3 weeks, as we discussed, it's such an all-encompassing thing that requires so much change in your internal processes, in mindsets and people. You cannot really understand that. So you need to be agile in enterprise to achieve what we just discussed. Yeah.
Do you think that you create value for the end customer as a new role in the big organization?
The question was, do I feel like I play a great role delivering the value for the end customer, right? So I believe so. Actually, despite having these intermediaries like the proxies between us and clients, like the sales guys, account managers, customer success, support guys, and so on, we do have the direct access. With the key clients, like the large clients and the global market, we do have like monthly or quarterly boards when we discuss the roadmap, we discuss all the features, we hear a lot of feedback. We can jump on the Skype call like to feel what they feel, do they feel that we actually delivered the value. And right now in my bag, every single feature that I have like in the next sprint, the sprint after that, next release, I know like the exact companies, the exact guys that are waiting for this particular feature. So when I deliver this kind of functionality in the campaign engine, like marketing automation campaign engine, I know this company A and B and C, they are like striving for it, and I will get the immediate response for them. So this is still possible. It's not like we are closed in some room and develop software and right there is like the open space. No, it's not like that.
There is one more question over there.
The question is, what kind of product or ideas are you validating on this startup or incubation inside a big corporation, big company, mature company, and how much do they differ from like initial business model? What is the innovation?
Like what is the innovation part in the enterprise, right?
Yes, why actually company decided to invest in this startup incubation part inside the company?
Maybe you got it wrong. When I was talking about the accelerator and so on, it was about my previous company, like before the Terrasoft. And right now it's the enterprise. So the Terrasoft having like multi-million-dollar turnover, it isn't going to the some
so
shitty
now you're
startup.
also working on enterprise environment.
Right. But still, this is the issue that actually Alexey mentioned, that what is the way how we can bring this kind of the startup spirit and the innovation and the capability to work in a very agile and fast way inside of the enterprise. And when you have this agile horizontal structure, when you have like multiple teams, you can have this kind of agreement with your stakeholders that you take this particular team of, I don't know, 7 or 8 people and you just work for this amount of time on this kind of new product concept and so on. But still you have some like additional steps, because there is a huge roadmap, there is a huge number of teams working on different products, different product features, so you need to align your vision, you need to approve your product concept with the stakeholders, you need to align your roadmap and so on. So it's a little bit more complicated than when you are on your own in your startup and you do whatever you want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do you have the same product for each customer? I mean, the same build?
Same build, but it might be quite a lot of customization in there. Yeah. So the basic model is you get the out-of-the-box products for all the customers, and you might have those who just use the user tools to customize it, or it might be for enterprises, it's always what happens. You might have a lot of customization done by the partners or customer himself to integrate system with his environment, to build the process that don't come out of the box. So there's always the out-of-the-box stuff and what's built on top of that. But still, even with that much of customization, we support the out-of-the-box functionality for the customers.
But what if some large VIP client requests some changes in some kind of core features, and for other customers it doesn't need, and it will, the product will be more complex, more huge, more overloaded? What
it's
do you do?
Always the point of discussion, either to convince the customer he doesn't really need that, or if there are really reasons that why he needs that, it could be done just for this one customer. Or if you see that it's a feature that serves only a particular small target group of customers, not just this one because it's his internal process, but for this industry, even with a small one, you can also consider the way of publishing that application on the marketplace. Like the partner who did that implementation can just say, I have a tool that's not suitable for everybody, it's not out of the box, but it should serve some customers like my one.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Alexey.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Misha.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.